and supreme healing. Peace and supreme healing, everyone. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share this video. We are going to get into it, and we're going to bust the doors wide open on this G6PD deficiency, what it is, steps to reversal, and nutrients you need for blood building. Okay. And before we get into it, I want you all to begin to not pay attention to disease names as so much as looking at the root of what the disease actually is, because as I've said in many of my videos, disease names are just attachments to your symptoms. Okay, it never takes you down the rabbit hole of exactly what you need to do to heal and restore the tissues of the body, of organ or gland or system. Okay, so even looking at and researching this G6PD, it took me a while to really put the pieces in the puzzle together, but I put it together to make it as simple as I can so the average person can understand what exactly this is, not to be afraid. That's another thing, not to be afraid of it and not to own it as well, including for your children. Do not own this disease. Don't own any disease, because the moment you own it and you place that energy on your children, you're automatically weakening that part of them that disease is already linked to. So it's important, family, that we begin to see and look at the root word of disease names and study etymology, because a lot of the history of medicine, they speak in code of Latin and Greek prefixes, which a lot of these disease names are attached to. Okay, so we have to be very, very careful on how we are reacting to hearing that, hearing that we have something, or that, you know, where we told our children have something. So it's very, very vital that we begin to pay attention to learning the etymology of words, because all of this is a word game. That's all it is. Every time you go deeper and deeper, you're like, what? Like when I first heard about diabetes from Dr. Lila Africa, he said that diabetes just means I pee a lot. That's the root word of diabetes, means I pee a lot. And those are characterizing the symptoms of a malfunctioned pancreas. So most people don't associate diabetes with the pancreas. We just know it as sugar, glucose, insulin. That's it. We don't associate it with the pancreas. We don't associate what we need to restore the pancreas, to restore glucose levels back to balance. So it's so important that we begin to learn the etymology of words so that we can get into the root cause of disease. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen up. I'm already on the, give me 1 second, family. I didn't want to share it when it's in there we go. All right, because I was skipping ahead. You see me? I was skipping ahead. All right, we're going to make this as smooth as possible. I love doing research. I get it from my mother. We're both like wanting to know the root, wanting to know and going down the rabbit hole and finding out the history of something, because that's important. The history of disease is important, to find out the first case, find out when it was so-called discovered, and find out, you know, what the methods were back then to treat it, or what led to it. So all of that, I put it in my simplest terms for you here today. Okay, so what is G6PD deficiency? Okay, this rare blood disease, steps to reversal, and nutrients needed for blood building. Again, family, as I always say, this is for educational purposes only. Okay, I am not a medical doctor. I am not a medical doctor. Okay, therefore, this is not medical advice. Is that you should still, I have to say, consult, you know, respected whatever, it is said. I don't even want to say respected, but because this is respected right here. This is the highly respected, and it's not alternative medicine. This is true first original medicine, okay, which is Eastern holistic natural law and order of what we need to return to. All right. So what is G6PD deficiency? All right. Introduction to G6PD, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. Okay. Glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase is a red cell enzyme. Okay. It's found in all areas of your body, all tissue of your body has this enzyme. Okay. And what it does, well, it's found in the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is the part of the cell. It's like that fluid-like, gel-like part of the cell that is there to protect the integrity of the cell, so that any kind of waste products, acids, are not destroying and causing rupture of the cell and its membrane. Okay. It is a housekeeping enzyme that plays a vital role in the protection of cellular damage from reactive oxygen species. It does this by providing substances such as to prevent oxidative damage. Now, a lot of us in health, natural health field for the last few years, you've heard of what? Antioxidants, oxidative stress. And this enzyme is a huge part of why we are protected from oxidative stress. Because what happens is, let's go to the first point. Well, first it says here that approximately 400 million people are affected worldwide, okay? Now, for this to be such a rare blood disease that they're painting it as, and then they have these numbers, we're going to get into the why of why so many people are diagnosed, especially newborn stage, are diagnosed with this so-called G6PD deficiency. Okay, so first, the glucose 6-phosphate, which is an enzyme, okay? It catalyzes, which it has a reaction, a chemical reaction from NADP plus to NADPH, which is the less oxidative form of the NADP, okay, which is a cellular protection, okay? This is part of the antioxidant or for you to be protected from oxidative stress that I was referring to earlier. This is all happening in this metabolic pathway called the pentose phosphate pathway. All right, it's an alternative route for the metabolism of glucose, or what you know as sugar. Okay, so it helps to break down and metabolize glucose. All right, the NADH, which is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate, is produced from the reaction by G6PD, protecting the cell against harmful reactive substances. All right, so anytime you eat specific foods, okay, what happens is, especially if it's acid forming, that acid or it forms into these reactive cells that now the lymphatic has to go on attack. All of your macrophages and your neutrophils, your eosinophils, basophils are all on attack to be able to neutralize these harmful substances that's entering into the body. And so now you have all of these happening on this pathway, this pentose pathway, that is there to protect the cell from oxidative stress, okay, by reducing it to that form, which you'll find that form NADPH or NADH in health food stores. They have it, NADH, I believe, in health food stores, and it says just that is for cellular protection. A lot of times you find it paired with iron, red blood cell, iron or herbs for red blood cell, and for the transportation of red blood cells, which is, we're going to get into hemoglobin, and understanding all of this and how all of that is connected. All right. So this is just, again, breaking it down to its simplest form of what this is, what this enzyme is, and what the role that it plays in our bodies on a daily basis. All right. G6PD enzyme deficient cells are unable to reduce the NADP plus, which is that long word that I already listed up there, the oxidized version to NADPH at a normal rate, causing oxidation of the red blood cells. Okay, so again, we know that oxidation, any kind of oxidative stress, ruptures the red blood cells, destroys the integrity of the red blood cells. Okay, and here I put another point that we must focus in on the spleen. All right, now the job of the spleen is to clean house of old red blood cells so that new red blood cells can be formed. And what's going on with the spleen, if the spleen is not able to do that at the rate that it's supposed to, then it's not able to clean up those old red blood cells or even form new ones. And so now the old red blood cells are ruptured, and the spleen is not able to do its job to clean that up so that you can create new ones. So now this leads to red blood cell destruction. Okay, but now here's where we get into what the real juice at. Okay, this is just the introduction to give you an idea of what G6PD is. Okay, breaking down the words, breaking down each of these different protections or antioxidants, I would like to call them antioxidants. All right, you see how your whole body is a pathway. Everything happening in your body is a constant pathway to protect you, to keep you here. The body never wants to self-destruct. So now you have a picture of that, this one pathway, this one metabolic pathway of how that operates when it comes to oxygenation. Okay, so let's keep going on. All right, this is where it gets fun. All right, if you ready, you'll put some ones in the chat. I want to see some ones in the chat when I pull up this video. Put some ones in the chat if y'all ready for this. All right, some ones in the chat. Let's get to it. All right. History of G6PD deficiency. We see with every disease, you have to go to the history. You have to go down the rabbit hole, because again, when I went down this rabbit hole, this disease was not even in existence 300 years ago. Okay, and again, we've been here how long on this planet? Tens, thousands of years, and this is such a new deficiency. It was definitely worth the research for this one. All right, so pay attention, y'all. We about to get into it. All right, the history of G6PD deficiency. G6PD deficiency is linked from an experiment on prisoners who were stated to be volunteers to test a new drug for malaria called primaquine or primaquine. This experiment took place at Stateville Penitentiary in the state of Illinois. Prisoner subjects were intentionally infected with malaria for the purpose of testing the safety and efficacy of the novel anti-malaria drugs. This is Tuskegee all over again. I mean, when you think about it, there's no one Tuskegee experiment. There was tons of experiments, and still experiments today on individuals with these new drugs. Every time you get something in the mail or your doctor asks you to participate in a clinical trial, like even last week or 2 weeks ago when I took my daughter to the eye doctor, and they stated that she had challenges with nearsightedness and that they wanted her to be a part of some trial of this contacts that prevents the furthering of destruction of the lens when it comes to myopia or nearsightedness. And I asked them, I'm asking all these questions. Well, when did this started? And I mean, I never was going to do it anyway, but I like to ask questions. When did this started? When did this trial started? When did this drug or this contact go on the market? They don't even have any studies as to long-term effects. They don't have the studies yet, because you are the study, okay? You are the study. Every time you take a drug and you see the side effects, where do you think they get that from? They get that from testing it on human subjects. They have to use someone to test it on so that they can know and write down in their scientific data okay, this is what it does. This is what happens. And G6PD deficiency is one of those things that this primaquine drug, this drug for malaria does. This is what it's linked to. Okay, it's going to get juicy. Keep watching. Keep watching. It's going to get juicy. G6PD is more seen in African countries, India, Asia, and Mediterranean groups. Affects more males than females, okay, and inherited from the mother's genes. So according to studies, they're stating that the mother has it dormant, like the gene is dormant within her, but once she births a male child or any children, most likely the male child will have this gene activated. And that's why when they have these different tests that they use in the newborn, when a newborn is born, they have like I know they use fluorescent tests to be able to test to see if the deficiency is there. And I don't remember this test given to my daughter when she was born. I mean, you know, let me tell y'all, I wish I had my child at home, but all of my future babies from this womb will be from home, because you wouldn't even have to worry about this. Okay. And I'm not saying no diagnosis means that the disease does not exist. What I mean is that the moment that you know, or they tell you this, you're all, you know, some parents are just very hysterical, or they get very nervous because when you don't know of something, then that's when you carry nervous energy. Okay. And from what I've read, which I don't want to skip ahead, but I'll say one thing: most people who are diagnosed with this G6PD deficiency never has a flare-up. Okay, the cases are very, very low. It just stays dormant. Okay, we're going to find out why. Okay, so timeline. This is going back into what they found after testing on these prisoners and you can look this up. I got the video. I'm not going to play it. I was going to play it, but it's pretty long. I only put the video up there so you can look it up for yourself on YouTube. It's a good look. It's a quick watch, 20 minutes. I'm going to show it in a minute, but I researched this family. Okay. I got reports, videos, everything linked to this so-called G6PD deficiency. All right. So it's very, very important that you tune in. All right. So that you know what this is and what you need to do for your children, for yourself, to always be ahead of the game. All right. So 1926, acute hemolysis discovered. It was not yet fully understood according to documents. Okay. So case in point, hemolysis, hemolytic anemia. Okay. So hemolysis is a blood condition where your blood cells are destroyed faster than they can be replaced. Okay. So that's what they say happens when the when you are G6P deficient. Okay. If there's a flare-up, if something caused the flare-up. Okay. So that's what they state that can happen, acute hemolysis or hemolytic anemia. All right. 1944, Stateville prison malaria testing started. This is when the testing started, and it never said how long it lasted, but I know that there was a whole trial that took place for all the doctors and the people in the prison that was involved. Some of them got prison sentences. Some of them I believe got off, but most of them got prison sentences behind testing on these prisoners for this new malaria drug. Okay, some of the prisoners have died behind testing on this so-called drug primaquine. Okay, now 1956, the listing of these people: Paul E. Carson, C. Larkin Flanagan, C. E. Ix, Alf S. Irvings discovered that the hemolytic anemia was caused by glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. Okay, now it wasn't just caused by that deficiency. What caused the deficiency? The deficiency was caused by this new drug, or one of many drugs that they've used to test, but this is the main one that they've used to test, was the primaquine. And I'm going to show you the documents. Now this, I believe this is the video. Yeah. I'm going to show you the documents of what is linked and how they show the link between the primaquine and the G6PD deficiency, how that drug it caused the G6PD deficiency. All right. So as you can see, you can go on YouTube, you can type this right in. Why did they give prisoners malaria on purpose? It's a short documentary. I won't play it here because, again, it's 21 minutes long. I thought I had a specific part that I want to play, but malaria is not the main subject that I'm focused on right now, but it is very crucial and vital to this presentation because it sheds a lot of light on this G6PD deficiency diagnosis and all of what it's linked to, because it did not come up until after this drug was introduced to the market for malaria. Are y'all following me? That this deficiency did not come up until after they started testing this drug primaquine, if I'm saying it right, for malaria on the prisoners. So that's why this plays an important role of putting all the pieces together as I went down the rabbit hole for y'all. I really trust that y'all are paying attention. All right. All right, let's go over here. This is where I wanted to show y'all. All right. Now, I highlighted it here. It says enzymatic deficiency, which they're talking about G6PD in primaquine sensitive erythrocytes. Erythrocytes are red blood cells. Okay, so you see here what they stated. These are the notes from the scientists that I've stated here. Paul E. Carson, C. Larkin, Flanagan, C. E. Hicks, Alf, S. Alving. This is in 1956, after they did the study on the prisoners in 1944, and they continue to do studies on others. They also did studies in the U.S. Army during World War II as well, okay? Because as you know, malaria is, they claim it's a deadly disease caused by a parasite. And let me look at my notes, family, because I'm going to butcher this word. Plasmodium falciparkum, okay, which they say is the most deadliest form of malaria, and it's caused by a parasite. Once you get bit by this mosquito, then the parasite is injected into your blood, and then it takes about 10 to 14 days for it to manifest, and then you begin to experience symptoms of shivering and low iron and all kinds of symptoms from what is called malaria. All right. But it's going to get better. We're going to really dissect into this. All right. So it says here, primaquine, which this is the chemical formula that is used in the drug. All right. Induces intravascular, that's the blood, hemolysis, which is the breaking down of the red blood cells, and about 10% of Negroes. Now you could tell how old this is because they're calling us Negroes. All right, but rarely in about 10% of Negroes, but rarely in Caucasians. Please take note of that. It causes intravascular hemolysis in about 10% of Negroes, but rarely in Caucasians. The hemolysis is due to a defect of red blood cells, is a function of cell age, and therefore is self-limited. Okay, now there's another point that I want to get to here. It says here, let me get to it. So hemolyzates from three other primaquine sensitive subjects showed virtually identical inabilities to reduce oxidized glutathione when glucose 6-phosphate was the substrate. Okay, so the substrate means that that's part of the substance that is needed to break down the glutathione to its reduced version. Glutathione, also think of that as antioxidant. Okay, So to determine whether this, let me see if I want to read that because I don't want to read too much. Okay, this part here and it's here. It says the ending part says, we interpret this data as demonstrating an abnormality in the direct oxidation of glucose in the red blood cells of primaquinine sensitive subjects. This abnormality affects glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase activity. Remember the activity of G6PD, not looking at the deficiency. This is an enzyme. Remember, the title of this report is enzymatic deficiency in primaquinine sensitive erythrocytes, which again is red blood cells. So this drug is linked to, and I'm going to read it again here. It says it results in, I lost it. Okay, I got it. It says this abnormality from the drug primaquinine affects the glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase activity, which means it's not able to go through the glycolysis pathway, which that is the breaking down of glucose, which once you break down glucose, then that converts into energy for the cell to use. But whatever this drug is, it's inhibiting the cell to do that, the enzyme to be able to form its function. I trust that y'all with me. I don't want to get too sciencey, even though I understand the science, but I don't want to drag y'all into that. This is supposed to be a simple form, so I trust that I'm building it up. I don't want to say break it down, but I'm building it up in a way where you can understand all of these happenings and what all of this is linked to. Okay, we're going to get to the next one. All right. Now, I literally just put it very, very simple. Okay. According to books that I've read, according to, and this is the book that I've read, family. I like to always give the book that I've used for research as well. It's called G6PD Deficiency and Sickle Cell Anemia among the Warless of India. Okay, so it's very prevalent there as well in that part of India. Okay, so this doctor wrote a book on it, and it's very, very informative if you want to learn it from a scientific point of view. There's a lot of science in here, breaking down the different enzymes and the pathways, metabolic pathways, and how all of it functions, and how it's all linked together. Also talks about sickle cell as well, and all sickle cell and G6PD is very, very closely related as it deals with the blood and anemia of the blood. Okay, so that's the book that I use. I also used that report, which it took me a lot to dig into. I had to pay for that report, y'all, too. You gotta pay for this research too, y'all. Come on. I put my time into this, y'all. Okay. All right, so G6PD and its relation to malaria. As I've stated before, that the main focus is not malaria, but it's very important that we dissect into it because it has a lot to do with this G6PD deficiency. All right. G6PD deficient red blood cells is noted to have protection against the disease malaria caused by a parasite, as I've stated before, Plasmodium falciparum. Am I saying it right? Falciparum. I misspelled it there. Falciparum, the most deadliest form of malaria. Okay. Now, before we get into it, primaquinine is a drug derived from a herb, a tree called, and I have it in my notes, Cinchona calisaya. Okay. And so what they used to use this herb, the bark and the leaves to treat malaria. Okay, and based upon studies, the symptoms will dissipate rather quickly. But then they decided to, I want to say, weaponize the plant. But all drugs are derived from herbs, roots, barks. All of the drugs that you know are even your blood pressure herbs. Those are derived from some kind of herb for the heart. I know foxglove is used in one of those herbs for the heart. Okay, which that's a herb as well. Okay, so all of your herbs all of the drug medications that we know are derived are really weaponized herbal formulas. That's what I call them. All right. So based upon my research and putting the pieces together, simplest form, G6PD deficiency was discovered after the drug primaquine, drug used for malaria, was administered to combat malaria. It seemed to have no effect on Europeans, but a greater negative effect on melanated people, specifically Africans and those of melanated descent, those of Asian descent, Mediterranean, tropical areas of the world. All right. This is due to our blood composition already equipped to handle the parasite that causes so-called malaria. Once the drug is given, as well as inoculations given to combat malaria, hemolytic anemia can occur. All right. Simply put, your creator, universal creator, has equipped you with everything you need to combat anything in this world. You wouldn't be put here to combat some mosquito that carries a deadly disease. It infects you and there's nothing you can do about it. Same goes for all of these diseases that they say are similar, like Lyme's disease related to a bite from a tick. And if you look that up, see, I'm not going to do a video on that. I did a little video on that on my page on Instagram. You got to really scroll, but that's all. You go down the rabbit hole of Lyme's disease. These are all false diseases. Matter of fact, family, they tried to diagnose me with Lyme's disease 5 years ago. I told them, no, I do not have that. They wanted to get me on this medication, which was part of a clinical trial. I said, no. I don't have it. All I had was a swollen knee, which was part of the symptoms of Lyme's disease. And I denounced what he said. He told me I would have joint issues. I wouldn't be able to, by the time I'm 30, I wouldn't really be able to walk. I would have early dementia because it eat up part of my brain. I'm like, what? Y'all say anything to scare us. I healed myself that entire summer by fasting, by taking herbs for the joints, herbs for the bones, or herbs for the lymphatic system, increasing my spleen energy, bone marrow, everything. And that swelling went down, and here I am, family, today, 5 years later. So we have to really understand that when we're studied, we have a different genetic composition than that of Europeans, okay? They have a different genetic composition on their end and we on our side. It's not just difference of skin color, it's difference internally, genetically, biochemically, DNA-wise. All of the pathways and metabolic functions that we have are totally different. So a lot of what's going on in our bodies cannot be understood by Western medical scientists and physicians. So when something cannot be understood and find out, now you know that G6PD deficient red blood cells, so those who have G6PD deficiency have this protection coat against malaria. And most people in Africa, in places where malaria is more prevalent, have G6PD. Most people in Africa, in places where malaria is more prevalent, have this G6PD deficiency. Why is that? Let's go into it. I was just so excited. And I was like, really like, I really trust that y'all understanding everything I'm saying. And if you have questions, keep watching because the question is going to be answered. All right. So malaria deaths and the RTS malaria inoculation. All right. We ain't going to say the V word because I ain't trying to get my channel taken down. All right. So let's go down the timeline. All right. Remember, let's go over what we already learned so far. G6PD deficiency was not discovered until they introduced the drug for malaria, primaquine. Primaquine causes the enzymatic deficiency of the G6PD, which is glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. This is a pathway, a metabolic pathway to break down glucose and NADP to its reduced oxidized form so that it becomes an antioxidant to protect the cell from damage and also protect your red blood cells and all other cells and cells and blood in the body. Okay, so that's what we're learning so far. Now we talked about malaria, we talked about what it is and how people who are G6PD deficient and also sickle cell anemia have a natural protection against malaria. Now, but those who are of European descent, which they mainly tested the drug on in the prison. You see a lot of photos of European men that were tested on, and a lot of them succumbed to the drug. Okay, and even then, malaria, if you look at the greatest fall, the fall of Rome in 79 AD, the Great Fall of Rome was due to the invasion of malaria. And these are all people of European descent. So something that they don't have in their blood to protect them is in ours. Let's go down the timeline. 1987, malaria inoculation was created. All right, they created the inoculation. 2019, tested in a pilot program in 7 African countries with endemic malaria. That just means that in that area, they have more cases of malaria. All right. Then in 2020, 241 million cases of malaria, 627,000 deaths. And this is not just in Africa. 2021, 91.1 thousand malaria deaths in 2021. Now they'll have you thinking that it's due to malaria. But look at the timeline, family. The timeline speaks for itself. This malaria inoculation was introduced in 2019. And in 2021, now we have 91.1 thousand deaths due to malaria in 2021 after the inoculation was introduced. But it's already said that most people who are in Africa are G6PD deficient, which their G6PD deficient blood automatically has a protection coat against the parasite that is related to malaria. When you're in certain zones and geographical places on the planet, your body will automatically adapt to that area. Meaning if we had those mosquitoes over here, our body will automatically adapt to that environment of where this so-called parasite bug is, where our body will automatically protect us from the invasion of the parasite. That's what your spleen is for. That's what your lymphatic system is for. Each component of your lymphatic system is there to protect you against parasitic, bacterial, viral invasion. We have viruses and all of these things, parasites all around us. But your body is equipped to handle all of that based upon environment. We don't have malaria cases over here. We don't have those kind of parasites and parasitic invasions over here. So maybe our blood is not, we don't have that many cases of the G6PD deficiency here. But in other countries where malaria is more present, it is. Now we're going to get into here. Now I know you're wondering why. Okay, well, are you saying that I can fight malaria here, or what is it? What is still the cause here in America? How was my child diagnosed with this as a newborn? How did I get this deficiency in my blood and pass it on to my children? Okay, we're going to get into it. Again, this is based upon my research. I really trust that you do your own due diligence and doing your own research and finding out for yourselves. But this is a great start if you want to use this as well. So I released a post on Instagram like about 2 weeks ago on drug medications in the bloodline and its effect on the blood. Okay. So they've never done a study, a long-term study as to how this primaquine, even a syphilis project in Tuskegee, how it affected families. Because matter of fact, actually, let me go back. And the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, babies that were being born from the men that were intentionally injected with syphilis, they were born blind, they were born with certain rare diseases, and so on and so forth. And everyone in that bloodline has some kind of weakness or deficiency within them. So it's possible that someone in your bloodline, if you were diagnosed with it, ask questions. Were your great-great-grandfather in the Army? Were anyone in the family part of some clinical trial study? Did you take drug medications while you were pregnant? You have to ask these questions so that you can go down the rabbit hole of your own family and find out the link here. And you don't really have to go that far. I mean, you can go back great-great-great-great-grandparents, because again, this wasn't really discovered until 1956, but they did the testing between 1940, a little before 1944, but 1944. So, and it's not just primaquine that's related to it. It's other drugs as well. There's a whole list of drugs, and I should have put it on here, but there's a whole list of drugs that those who were diagnosed with G6PD deficiency cannot have, because what it does is it begins to break down the red blood cell or rupture or destroy the red blood cell in the body. Okay. And that's with anyone, but with those who were actually diagnosed with it, came here already with that weakness of the red blood cell and of the spleen, which we're going to get into, focusing on the spleen and focusing on specific organs to help you to reverse, steps to reversal, and steps on just solutions in general. So some of the drugs that they're stating that can induce what is called hemolytic anemia, which is the breaking down of blood cells where it's not being able to produce fast enough. So they're saying methylene blue, acetanilide, furazolidine, nalixic acid. All of these words are so really challenging to pronounce. Sulfanilamide. Okay, so there's a whole list of different drug medications that can induce hemolytic anemia, but for the most part, the symptomatic or the symptoms that induce the anemia is based upon taking of drug medications. Okay, most people never experience any kind of flare-up, or most people are asymptomatic, they say, when it comes to the G6PD deficient red enzyme or red cell enzyme. Okay, and it's flared up when we take certain drug medications, which we shouldn't be taking anyway. Okay, so for the most part, family, if your child's been diagnosed with this, or you've been diagnosed with this, this is not something that you should be like, oh my gosh. But also proceed with caution and with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding on what this truly is. And I trust that this was an opening gateway to helping you to do that. All right. So it says point, drug medications given to mother during pregnancy, the father, and those in the bloodline has an effect on the integrity of the blood. Based upon research, drug medications in certain foods such as fava beans, or what they call favism, cause anemia symptoms in those who are G6PD deficient. Now, the reason why they say fava beans and other beans are, oh, pardon me. Are detrimental to those who have this G6PD deficiency. Fava beans contain a toxin or toxins called visine or covisine, which robs and breaks down the red blood cells, causing oxidative stress. And really, in general, beans converts into carbonic acid, leading to low iron. So really, we shouldn't be certain foods like the peanut butters, beans, and that's all your beans should not be eaten on a daily basis. And I remember Dr. Sabi talking about beans and how it's detrimental to our health, how it causes acid, it irritates the mucous membranes, irritates the lymphatic system and organs of the lymphatic system, which is the spleen. Okay, and again, the spleen is very important to pay attention to when it comes to this deficiency. So in general, I wouldn't, and now it's opening me up to pay attention to the beans and how much beans we are actually eating, because, you know, of course, with the whole plant-based movement, that's part of most of our diets, most of what we eat. But we also have to recognize all the foods on the planet were not for human consumption. Okay, just because it's here, and not just talking about, you know, standard American diet, I'm even talking about these so-called natural foods of the earth. It was not all for human consumption. All right, so we have to really look into that more as far as the effect that beans have on us. I know when you're doing a detox or anything, beans are not good to have. They're very heavy, not just heavy on the digestive system, but again, acid forming. All right. Okay. Oh my goodness. I don't even think it's been an hour, but if it has, it's been a fun hour. Yes, so we have come to it. Now, again, to run it back, run it back. All right. We are not owning this disease name. All right. I gave you so much information going down the rabbit hole for you of what this is, the causes, possible causes within your bloodline. You have to do your research, find out. Okay, what was the first case? They're saying that you might the mother may have been a carrier from the father's side. Then the father might have it, but then the father was never tested for it, because if you have a child who's an infant now, and then you might be what, in your late 20s or 30s, then the father has to be, you know, whatever age he's at. They weren't testing for G6PD deficiency back then. So how would the father not diagnosed, but now this new generation of children are? All right, so we have to begin to really think, family. All right, so first, do not own a disease name, not for yourself or not for your children. All right. Number one, focus on the spleen. We talked about that. The spleen's job is to be able to clean up old red blood cells so that new red blood cells can be formed. All right. But when that does not occur, a lot of the symptoms of that flare-up hemolytic anemia is the same as in infected spleen or enlarged spleen. All right. So you want to pay attention to focusing on the energy of the spleen, herbs for the spleen, astragalus, Cassandra berries, sarsaparilla, beet powder, which is your nitric oxide, red clover, cleavers, goji berries, all your dark berries, okay? You want to eat all of your carbon fruits and vegetables, okay? But all your dark, your bilberries, your raspberries, your blackberries, blueberries, all of the dark, because that's where all of your antioxidants are, okay? That's where all of it is contained. And the darker the berry, the sweeter the juice. The darker the berry, the more carbon it has. And that's what we are. We are carbon-based people. The more iron it has. Okay. So very important that you, for your child as well, have them eat a lot of dark berries. Okay. You can even make the herbal teas as an iced tea for them. All right. And this is your blueprint for your child. If this is something that they've been quote unquote diagnosed with as an infant or whenever they were diagnosed, this is a blueprint for how you can take care of your child. Okay. Chlorella. Chlorella is highly important. Highly important. Okay. It mimics the red blood cell, the component, goodness, I have it in my notes. Yes, the chlorella has this almost the same molecular structure as hemoglobin, okay, which is the part of the red blood cell that transports the energy and the oxygen cell to cell. Okay, so that is very, very vital for you to intake on a daily basis, especially for your children. You could literally put it in water with some lemon and lime, put some agave in there, make it a green lemonade. Okay, so chlorella, crack cell wall. You want to get the crack cell wall, which I have on my website. Crack cell wall, because that way the cell can actually be bioavailable to the cell, meaning that the cell can actually absorb it. All right. There's a lot of different chlorellas out there are not absorbable by humans because we don't have the cellular wall to break down the wall of the chlorella, or we don't have the cell function to break down the wall of the chlorella. So with the crack cell wall chlorella, that's what you need. All right. Also very high in magnesium too. All right. Juice Plus, which is the raw food package. That is the raw fruit, raw berries, raw vegetable, raw omega. I definitely suggest that for your child, especially they're going to be getting those raw berries in on a daily basis. All right. So you can either get the raw berry gummies or you can get the raw berry in a powder. Okay. And literally it has all of those berries that I've discussed earlier: elderberries, bilberries, raspberries, all of it. Okay. Constantly flooding their bodies and flooding your body with dark berries. Okay. I believe that's it. Yes, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And family, I trust that you gained a lot from this presentation. Again, the focus wasn't malaria, but malaria was a very important part of this presentation because that's how this so-called G6PD deficiency was discovered. But now we can see that this deficiency was discovered based upon the introduction of a drug, okay? And a lot of diseases that we know, that's called iatrogenic disease, meaning that it was caused by a procedure or, by drug medication. So we have to be aware before we own something, okay? But again, it doesn't mean that maybe if you're not able to find it or dig deep within your bloodline, that's okay. You have the facts here, all right? It's not, listen, we didn't make it deep like, oh my God, it's this and that. Why do I carry the gene? I gave you my perspective of possible reasons why, okay? Possible reasons why. So think back and ask your family as far as simple questions like, were they in the army at that time? Where they could possibly have been tested on for that drug or any drugs related to that. Because again, there's many different drugs that's related to the G6PD deficiency. Again, you're not just born with something just because. And again, is G6PD deficiency a bad thing when it comes to the certain area that you live in? Because according to living in places like where malaria is more prevalent, you need to have less, you need to have the oxidized version of the NADP, which we discussed, so that that protects against the parasite that causes malaria. So again, those living in those areas of the world are more G6PD deficient because their bodies adapted to the environment to be able to protect them against the environment. It's a lot, man. Your body is so strong, it's so intelligent and knows what to do. You have to trust it, trust your children's bodies, and know that everything is placed by design. Okay, so it's 3 a.m, y'all. I am about to get out of here. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. I'm definitely gonna be putting more content up. It's been a minute because I've had time. I needed time to research and put this together for you guys. But I trust that this makes sense. I trust that you can, go off and do your own research of exactly, what this is. But again, I'm just so grateful to be able to share this information and knowledge with you all. And trust yourself. You were made perfectly. Your bodies are made perfectly to handle and be equipped to be able to fight any disease that may come your way. Thank you, family, again. Peace and supreme healing.